I would like to show you some of the new instrumentation that has been developed by Advanced Dental Designs. I'm illustrating here the second generation of instrumentation that was developed by Advanced Dental Designs, and we think of this one as the third generation. And this has a lot of features that the doctors themselves have recommended and asked that we build into the Articulator system. This is one of the things that Advanced Dental Designs has always been interested in, that is developing the instrumentation that best serves the dental profession. And I think this instrument will show you a lot of their unique designs to accomplish that. Let me show you now some of the features of the new instrument, the AD2 articulator. First, you have to understand that the basic concepts of the third generation is basically the same as the second generation. And let me indicate to you what I mean there. Number one, you'll see that we have both the incisal guide pen and then we have the posterior support pen here. Also, we have the analogs, the same as before, and also the graph, the numbers showing the angle of the eminence here. The feature of the Centric Latch, Centric Lock is basically the same as the second generation. I will demonstrate it very quickly. Number one, the Centric Latch is held down by a magnet as here. And as you bring the Centric Latch down, you can see that the magnet will hold the Centric Latch down. And then the Centric Lock goes down, and now the articulator will move side to side. Put the Centric Latch back in place, Centric Lock in place, and the Centric Latch in place. The Centric Latch holds the top of the articulator against the condyle balls. And we have also the side shift activators, the same as we had on our other systems, which incorporates the immediate side shift. The posterior pin here is a support pin. It's called just a support pin. It supports the top of the articulator, like so when you're working. The incisal guide table has been changed to accommodate work that the general dentist will be doing, or the prosthodontist when they do full mouth reconstruction, and you'll see how that works in just a moment. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar, I'd like to go through all the details of the articulator so that you understand exactly how it works. The first thing is, notice that the finish of the articulator now is nice and smooth, rounded features, and a nice color system. So aesthetically, it's very pleasing to the eye. Also, the nice smooth system makes it much easier to clean the articulator if you get any plaster on it. And anytime you work with an articulator, if you take a little silicone spray and spray a little silicone spray on the articulator before you use the plaster, then if you do get plaster on the articulator, you can take a damp cloth and wipe it off very easily. And that way you keep your instrumentation very beautiful. Another feature that's quite different in this one is that the incisal guide pen is a modular system now. We have a system here that is strictly a straight pen, which most orthodontists prefer. And you can see then that you read the position, the millimeter position here, and when the mark is on the 0 mark here, that means the top of the articulator is parallel to the lower member of the articulator. And if I adjust the incisal guide pen so that to make it longer, you can see that I've opened the articulator and made the raised the top of the articulator and increased the vertical between the two. The orthodontist usually prefers the straight pen because the actual numbers here are actually millimeter measurements, and so you can record the actual millimeter movement of the top of the articulator in relationship to the lower member. The Restorative dentist generally likes to use a curved pen modular system, so we take off the straight pen and replace it with the curved pen. The difference now, and I'd like to move in so you can see that the curved pen, before I put it on the articulator, you can see that it works on a curvature with the opening and axis of the articulator. The numbers here are not really millimeter measurements. They are actually just units because it's working on a curvature. But you might think of it, if you're recording it on the patient's chart or something, you might record it as a millimeter measurement, but really it is strictly a unit measurement because of the curvature that you're working on. So it's not a true millimeter. The difference, let me get this on. The difference in the straight pen and the curved pen is this, that when you move the curved pen and change the vertical dimension of the articulator, the curved pen will always drop to the same point on the incisal guide table, whereas the straight pen will change because it will move in and out depending on your opening and closing of the articulator. But the curved pen always drops to the same point on the incisal guide table. That's the way the restorative dentist develops their disclusion, etc. Many of them do. So that's one feature that's different now, the modular pen system. Notice on the articulator here, the analog has a 1.5 millimeter immediate side shift built into it. And now if I want to change the angle of the eminence for the patient, I use the graph setting here to indicate the change in the angle of the eminence. And to do that, it takes two screws. You unloosen the screw here and here, and now you can change the angle of the eminence. I want to show you how the side shift activators work, and to do that I have to first release the centric latch and the centric lock. Watch the top of the articulator. I'm only holding the incisal guide pen in doing that. Notice how side shift activators activate it and allow the 1.5 millimeter side shift to take place. Okay. Now, if I need for some reason to take the articulator apart, to take the top of the articulator off, I have to take the side shift activators off, release the centric latch and centric lock, and now I can lift the top of the articulator off. These are the analogs, and this is the area, what we refer to as a fossa box, in which your condyles sit here in both sides. One of the things that's extremely important is that you always keep these analogs clean. Use warm soapy water and with a Q-tip and wash out these analogs. Don't let plaster or anything accumulate in the fossa boxes. Also, don't take an instrument and scrape away the plaster. So always clean it good there. If you get any wax there, the liquid from your self-curing acrylic will clean that wax out pretty good without scraping the fossa boxes. Now I'm going to put it back together again, and to do that I'm just going to take the condyle, seat them in the analog, bring it down, replace my extras. Now one of the things that's important with this also is it prevents you from dropping the top of the articulator on the floor when you open it, so it prevents you from damaging the instrument. So another valuable feature of the side shift activators. And as I said, you have this posterior support pin, so that when you're working on the articulator, you can accomplish that. Another feature that was requested by one of the doctors is to have a pointer that indicates the position of the central incisors. And so if you take the top off of this posterior support pin and turn it up, the pin is stored in the posterior support pin. And you can then put it into the incisal pin, and it just screws in like so. And you can line up on your central incisors like here. So, and don't lose the pin. The best way to know where the pin is, so always put it back in the posterior support pin and put the black cap on. Another feature that has been recommended and requested by restorative doctors are these lines that we've put on the posterior part of the lower member. If you look at the lines here, you see that these two lines parallel each other, and they're vertical lines. And across the top here, this was requested by an actual lab technician, that they use these lines to help wax the occlusal plane when they're doing a full wax up of the case. These two lines are actually the center. If you had your pin set at 0, these two lines would be the center also between the upper and lower members. And so these lines are used by the restorative dentist and the lab tech to do their full mouth wax ups. Okay, AD2 has the mounting plates for your instrumentation, and they fit the same as always, your posterior and your anterior part, and just put them on. Use your fingers to completely seat the plate, and then use the screw merely to hold it in place. Do not use the screw assembly to pull the plate in place. Use your hands to seat it. Your lower mounting plate, the same way, place it so that you put it on totally with your hand, and the screw is used only to hold it in place so that you have your articulator. Now you're ready to mount your upper and lower models. One of the other features, the AD2 has the support stand here, which attaches to the back of the articulator. Which allows you then to place the articulator. If you're taking photographs, puts it in a good position for you to take photographs, and you can open it up and also do some work on the teeth in that manner. The other good feature of this type of support stand is that we can still pick up the articulator and hold the articulator like this, and then go back to our support stand, or it can be like this. So this is a nice feature also that AD2 has with their articulator system. Also, I just wanted to show you the serial number of the articulator is located here, and the lower member located here on the lower. So your serial numbers for your articulator system. The company Advanced Dental Designs started for basically one or two reasons. Number one, the purpose was to develop very accurate instrumentation of high quality that could be sold to the dental profession at a very, very reasonable rate. This would make it possible for doctors all over the world, no matter what country they're in, to be able to afford this instrumentation, and thus work on their patients could be improved. That was a basic concept of why Advanced Dental Designs was started. Now I'd like to show you, when I talk about the accuracy of the articulator, I'd like to demonstrate how accurate these instruments are. And to do that, I'm going to use first the second generation articulator that I used for several years. And whenever I got the articulator, the first thing I always did was make a test column. A test column is used and measures to 5/10,000ths of an inch accuracy. It is used to check to make sure my instrument is still accurate 6 months from now or a year from now. Or if I were to drop the instrument, did I damage the instrument or not? Is it still accurate? So a test column is the only way you know that your instrument maintains its accuracy. And so I want to show you the test column that I've made for this articulator, the 2nd generation, and it has the serial number on it here. And so I'm going to put it on the articulator. Put the lower member on the articulator. Now, if I move the Incisal Guide Pen out of the way, and if I close the articulator slowly, the positive here should fit into the negative grooves exactly. And if they fit exactly, then it is tested to 5/10,000ths of an inch accuracy. If I closed it, that is with my articulator locked in centric, if I close it and it doesn't come together exactly right, then my articulator is no longer in centric and it needs to be adjusted. So if I take it and close it very slowly, and I'll show it from the side so that you can watch this area here. If I close it very slowly, you can see it fits exactly. So this instrument is still accurate to 5/10,000ths of an inch accuracy. And I made this test column when I first got the instrument. I'm going to take the test column off of this articulator and place it onto the new articulator. And let's see if it tests, if split cast checks. Now I'm going to take off just for its demonstration purposes, I'm going to take off the incisal pen so that you can see very clearly. Now if I take it again and close it very slowly, I've got it locked in centric. Close it very slowly. You can see it comes together exactly. So that this articulator split cast checks to 5/10,000ths of an inch accuracy, the exact same test column from from the 2nd generation to the 3rd generation. This shows the accuracy in which these articulators are made. They are interchangeable. I can take models off of one articulator, put it on another articulator, and you have the exact same measurements. Exact same relationships. So this is one of the beauties of this instrumentation is that the articulators are interchangeable. Therefore, if you have a case you're working on, you don't have to send your entire articulator to the dental lab, for example. You can send the models. They can have an AD2 articulator in the lab and they can do their work there, send the models back to you. So your articulators never leave your office. The new mounting stand, it's the same as the old mounting stand. The difference is just the color and the fact that it's anodized and polished very beautifully. So again, it will clean up very nicely. It's used the same as in the past, and I'll just show you very quickly how that's done. Notice these grooves that's cut in here on each side. If you take your articulator and the side shift activators, the 2 posts there holding those, just slip in. If we're going to mount our lower model, we've already mounted our upper model, so we're going to mount our lower. So we would put the 2 pins in and turn it over. And we can adjust the level with the posterior pin. And now we're ready to mount our lower model. The upper member always goes over the plate here, and so we'd just close it down with the plaster and the model, and we mount our lower model like so. I want to show you the new AD2 instrument called MCD. MCD stands for Measures Condyle Displacement. And I will put some models on and show you exactly how this works later on in the presentation. But first I'll just point out 2 or 3 things for you. Number one, the column here is strictly a support column. It is not used to try to check the accuracy of the analog settings here. It is strictly to support the upper and lower members when they're not in use. Now let's take a look at some of the features of the MCD. When you get ready to use it, you would remove these two caps here, and you can see condyles. The lower member looks just like your articulator, and the upper member looks like your articulator, except for the fact that rather than the analog condylar analogs here, you have these condyle blocks here. And if we look very close, let me show you one other thing also. If we also take off the protective cap here, now then, if we look very close, you can see that in the center of the condyle ball right here is a little point. The same way over here. Right in the center of the condyle ball, there's a little point. And if we look here, at the end of this column, there's a little point there also. Those 3 points are all in the same axis, both vertically and horizontally, anterior, posteriorly. They're all in the exact same axis. That axis is the same axis as your articulator. The condyle blocks will, when you loosen them, will move out and touch here. The same way over here. And later on, I'm going to put a case on here and show you exactly how this works. But again, you can see how beautiful the instrumentation is made. It's anodized and polished so that we clean up very nicely. So I want to now show you some of the new Facebow systems, and then we'll mount a case on the articulator and do an MCD. When you get the AD2 anatomical Facebow, this is the things that you receive in the Facebow kit. Let me go over each part with you so that you can understand exactly what it all is. This is the ear bow, and you vary the width by turning this screw here, and you can adjust the width according to the patient's head. This part fits into the ears, and then once you put it into the ear and locate the exact width, you lock it to that width. And you have also, especially in restorative cases where they're restoring the anterior teeth, it's important to get the alignment of the incisal edges of the anterior teeth aesthetically pleasing and horizontal to the horizon, so to speak. And so to help do that, the doctor has these two levels here, bubble levels. And this level, for example, can be used side to side, and when you get it exactly straight, then that locates so that the aesthetic plane on the patient is not tipped when you restore the teeth. And this bubble is used to get the anterior posterior level. And so that's the purpose of the two bubbles that you see there. When you mount models on an articulator, you mount on a plane. A plane is 3 points. It takes 3 points to make a plane. And on the ear bow, our 3 points are the 2 pieces that go into the ear here, which you're estimating the axis of the temporomandibular joint with these 2 points here. The 3rd point is established here, which you'll see in a moment with what we call a nasion relator. And so 1, 2, 3 points make a plane, and the 3rd reference point is even with this bar here. This is an orbital pointer, and some doctors use it to mark on the patient the exact 3rd reference point here. And you would take it and turn it like so, and then you move over, and you would touch the patient and put a little mark on the patient, and then you can record it. You can see that when I do this, it comes out exactly even, flush with this point here. So that those are the 3 points that make the plane. The 3rd reference point on an ear bow, on an anatomical face bow, is a kind of an estimated 3rd reference point, and it's done with what we refer to as a nasion relator. This is the nasion relator, and it has a flat plane here which goes against this screw, and it moves in and out like so. And then you lock it in position with the screw. This fits onto the ear bow like this. See the slot here and the slot here. Line those up and lock it, and now we've got our nasion relator, and this would go then against the patient nasion area, and that will then locate and automatically the height of the 3rd reference point in the front. It's usually about approximately 22 millimeters distance here. Now, the other parts that we have with our face bow, we have 2 bite forks, and you can see the bite fork has a center line on it here, and then they're both alike. This is the bite fork assembly, and it has a movable part in a vertical direction and a movable part in a horizontal direction. The bite fork assembly fits onto the face bow here. And so if we look closely at the vertical portion, you'll see that one end is longer than the other, the flat area here. Also, you'll see that there's a little hole here. This part goes onto the face bow, so that it goes onto the face bow in this hole here. So you slip it in. The flat part toward the front. First you got to get the screw out of the way. Then slip it in. Now, when you have it correct, you can see now there's a little dot there, and you can see how this part is even with this bar here. So that's your 3rd reference height, and this would be like this on the patient. So your bite fork, once you've put the bite fork on the patient and record the occlusal surfaces of the teeth, the bite fork then would go into the toggles. Doing this with one hand, difficult, so let's see if I can get it started. First, I'm going to just lock the vertical. And then I would lock the horizontal. So that on the patient, once you take it off the patient, you have something like this. Then when you're ready to mount your models, let me tighten this a little more. When you're ready to mount your models, what you've recorded here, you've estimated the position of the maxilla in relationship to the TMJ. And then you would release this and take this to your articulator and mount your upper model on your articulator like this. And I'll show you how that works in just a moment. To mount your upper model, you will have to take off the incisor guide table on the articulator and place the mounting table. And when you place the mounting table, make sure it goes all the way back. Once we have placed the mounting table on the lower member of the articulator, we'll take our bite fork assembly and place it in and tighten it. And now then our bite fork is centered over the articulator, and we would be ready to mount our upper model, which would be placed here on the bite fork. The couple of things that are very important now. When you are doing a Facebow, you must tighten these hex nuts very, very tight. If not, if you don't tighten them tight, let me show you what will happen. It will move. So these have to be tightened very, very tight. Otherwise, it will move and you'll have an inaccurate mounting. Now, also, never, we call these toggles. These are called toggles. Never tighten the toggle without the bite fork in place, because what you'll do is you will bend this hole so that it won't be a perfect circle. Once you've bent the hole, then you can't get your bite fork into it. So make sure that anytime you're going to tighten these toggles, that your bite fork is in the hole. Now you can tighten the toggle and not distort the round. Okay. Now, a couple other points. Some doctors have some difficulty tightening the toggles good with the hex wrench. And so what we've done is provide another way to do that you might find easier to do. And it's these two screw assemblies here. You see one is long, one is shorter. The long one, the short one. The long one replaces this hex nut here. So if I take out the hex nut here, and I put this assembly in, now you use, after you get it screwed all the way in, you use the lever arm here to tighten. And you would do the same thing here. You would take and you use the lever arm to tighten and hold the bite fork in place. So that's when you get your kit and you see these two things in there, you wonder what they are. Well, this is what it is. For some doctors, this lever system works better to get things good and tight. We've just finished taking a Facebow on this patient, and I'm going to show you now how to mount the models. And in this particular patient, I used a Beauty Pink extra hard wax on the bottom of the bite fork, as you can see. That was used to hold the bite fork in place while I took the ear bow. And so now to mount the models, I'm going to take the bite fork off. And I can leave the pink wax on or I can take it off. Either way, I'm going to leave it on for the moment. But I've got to set my articulator up now in order to mount the upper model. So to do that, I'll first put on our mounting plates. And of course I put the mounting stand on. And one of the things I forgot to mention to you is you'll notice that the mounting stand has a tall area and a shorter area. The AD2 system, you always use this area for your mounting. This tall system was made because on the Panadent Facebow, their vertical stem on the bite fork assembly is not as long as the AD2 system. So they would use this one if they were using the Facebow, AD2 Facebow, and mounting on the, if they're using the Panadent Facebow and mounting on the AD2 articulator, they would use this mounting area here to mount their model, their upper model. Okay, so we're going to now put the bite fork assembly in place. Tighten it. One of the things, notice now when I tighten it, if it's not on center, notice how the flat area automatically centers the bite fork. I want the top of the articulator parallel to the lower member when I mount this lower model, so I make sure my incisal guide pen is set at the 0 mark. We're getting ready to mount the upper model now on our patient where we've just done a Facebow recording. And so the first thing I want to do is I want to support the bite fork so that when I put my model on, the weight of the model won't displace the bite fork. So I'm going to check to see how much plaster I need to support the bite fork. And I'll mix up a little plaster now, put here, and then slip underneath and let it get hard. I like to use whip mix mounting stone to do these procedures. A lot of doctors prefer to use Snow White number 2. That's fine. What's important is that you use a plaster or a stone that is fast setting. We're going to use our power-centric bites that we took on our patient. And first thing we always do is that we make sure that we trim away the excess wax so that we have basically just cuss tip indexing. And then we're going to put it onto the model, and we're going to look from the lingual and make sure that our wax bite is not touching the stone anywhere, that it's resting only on the teeth. And we see that we're nice and clear here. We have to do the same thing with our posterior section also. We'll put it onto the model and look from the lingual, make sure it's not touching soft tissue anywhere, and it's fitting firmly onto the teeth. One of the things that's very important, you'll notice here that my wax bite in the posterior covers the first molar and the second bicuspid. The patient has only second molars distal to my wax bite. If my patient had third molars, I would have to make sure that this posterior section of wax bite covers most of the second molar and the first molar. And because if I don't support the model far enough back with my wax bite, then the weight of the model in the posterior will tend to fall off of my wax bites. And so I must support, whenever you got third molars on the upper, make sure that your wax bite extends and covers over half of the second molar plus the first molar. And that way your wax bite will stay in place, or your model will stay in place on your wax bites. When the mounting stone has set and it's good and hard supporting your bite fork, you can proceed to mount your upper model. But a couple of important points. This happens to be the lower model, but you want to make sure that you cut some retention grooves into the base of your upper and lower models, and that your model base is wet when you start to mount your models. So I have had the upper model sitting in some water, so the base should be nice and wet now. So we make sure fit it carefully into the AccuBites. Make sure it's seated good. And then once I have my model seated properly into the AccuBites, I want to check and see how much plaster I need now to mount the upper model to the mounting plate. But at the same time, remember I said we always make sure that when you're mounting your upper model that your incisal guide pen be set at the 0 mark, because that parallels the upper member of the articulator to the lower member. So we look and we see, and you can see that we need quite a bit of stone here in order to mount this upper model. When you're mixing your stone, you want to have just kind of a nice creamy mix. You don't want to have it real stiff, nor do you want it to be real runny. So we're going to take a little bit now and put on the upper model first, kind of tap it a little bit to work it into the retention grooves. And then we'll start putting it on our upper mounting plate. Again, kind of vibrating the first part in so that I get it into the retention area nicely on the mounting plate. Now I've got to kind of build it up. And here I'm going to maybe wait a moment, let it take on a little bit more body. Okay, now we just sit and wait for this to get hard. One of the things, now that my stone is set and I've attached my upper model to the mounting plate, and you have to be careful. One of the things you have to watch for, if your central incisors are seated too deep into the compound, in other words, if your upper incisors are down into the compound like this, when you start to open the articulator, you're opening on an arc like this. And so you can break off an incisal edge if you're seated too deep into the compound. In this instance, we aren't seated very deep in the compound, so I can open it without any problem. But if it were seated deep into the compound, what I would do is I would take a hold of the model, hold the plate, hold it down, and I would unscrew and lift the top of the articulator off and then take the model off. But we're okay here, so I can open it, as you can see, with no problem. So I'm going to open the articulator and get ready to mount the lower model. The mounting stone is set now, and now we can get ready to mount our lower model. To do that, I want to open the articulator and remove the bite fork assembly. And I want to now set my incisal guide pen at +3. Some doctors use 4. Whichever number you use, it's kind of arbitrary, but use the same number for every patient. What you're doing when I say set it at +3, what I'm doing is I'm opening the articulator like this. I'm creating more distance between the upper and lower members of the articulator. That's the reason it's called a plus number. If I were moving the top of the articulator so that it went down, it would be a minus number on the incisal pen. But I want to open it like this to make the distance larger, because I'm accommodating the thickness of the wax bite. And so when I take the wax bite out and bring the teeth together, I want the upper and lower members to be relatively parallel. So I'm going to adjust the incisal guide pen to +3. Each of those little numbers is a millimeter. So you can see now I've set the incisal guide pen at +3, so I've created more space between the upper and lower members of the articulator. We've got our upper model mounted, so now we want to mount our lower model. And so we're going to use the mounting stand for that. And we'll place the side shift activator pins into the slot here and let it slide down to the bottom. And then adjust the posterior support pin so that eventually we want the bottom of the lower model parallel to the tabletop. So we'll check that in just a moment. And so now I have to put the wax bites on. Make sure I get them in place correctly. Fit our lower model into that, and I've had the lower model in water, so the base of the model is wet. Make sure it's seated good. Now then I look, and you can see here now, it gets pretty good. The base of the lower model is parallel to the tabletop, so that when I add plaster to it, it won't fall off. So that's the reason you should want to do that. Now, I want to close the articulator down and see how much mounting stone I need to mount my lower model. And you can see it's going to take quite a bit. And it's also going to be a difficult mounting because of the fact that the lower model is behind the center of the plate quite a bit. So the stone has got to reach back to that lower model. So it's going to be a little bit of a difficult mounting, even to the point that I might have to do 2 mixes of stone to mount it, but I'll start out with the idea of just 1. And in this situation, you may want to have the mounting stone mixed a little thicker with a little more body, so it won't tend to fall off when you have to build it up the way I've got to build it up in this instance. Now when I close the articulator down, it will tend to wipe that plaster to the front of the lower model, so I have to catch it to keep it from going down on the lower model so much. I'm going to check now. The mounting stone is hard, so I'm going to take the articulator off of the lower mounting stand, turn it over, and open it. Put the posterior support pin down all the way. Take off the wax bites. Okay, but now I want to just close the articulator down. I have to be kind of careful because we've got to secure this lower model eventually much better than it is now, so I'll be careful how I handle it. But I just want to close it down and see what the occlusion is. So I've got to get my incisal guide pen out of the way. I'll get a piece of articulating paper and we'll mark the first contact, but you can see how she has a tendency for an open bite all the way around. Let me get a piece of articulating paper and mark first contact. Again, make sure the incisal pin is out of the way, and it's not. So I'm going to remove the entire assembly. That way we'll be able to see better also. This patient, her first contact is on the first bicuspids. A little unusual, but it is there. Nothing else touches. You can see a tendency for the open bite, like in a slide over jet. So what I want to do now is we want to do an MCD, that is, we want to measure the difference from CR to CO. So I'll get all the instrumentation set up for that. And the first thing we've got to do now is prepare our MCD. To do that, we'll separate it. Remember this is just a support column. So we get rid of the support column. We'll put just a very thin coat of aquaphor on the center plate here and the two condyle plates there. So you put a little aquaphor on, which is just a separating medium, but then we'll wipe it off so that you hardly know any's on there. Now I'm going to take a Kleenex and wipe off the excess. Now, what we're going to do is put the flags. We call them flags. Actually, they're millimeter grid. And you can see here you have one for the right side, one for the left, and we have the center graft. We usually do not use this one on the front table. Restorative dentists might use it, but orthodontically we don't really find it much use. So we use just the two condyles and the center tab. I'm going to put the center tab on first, this one. Now to put this on, you want the base of the MCD facing you, so that when you put it on, you can read what it says here. And so it would go on like this. So I take off the flag, and sometimes this works better without gloves, because the gloves, it'll stick to the gloves so much it's very difficult to handle it. So I'm going to take off the gloves. I'm going to turn the articulator toward the camera, so the MCD toward the camera, so you can see exactly what I'm doing. But I'm pretending that you are actually putting this on to the instrument, so that you can see the center line here. I must line up the center line here with this line. and I'll put it over this area so that I can kind of tape it down to these 2 points when we first start. So I'm going to go in. So you see how I tried to line up the center line exactly. Now the instrument is made so that these 2 arms here, those 2 points, rest on the table to stabilize it so that you can put the flags onto the condyle blocks. I'm going to try to turn it so that everything is facing the camera, so we're going to pretend you there in the camera actually placing these flags. Let's see if I can do it. I'm on the right side, so I take the right flag off. And what I have to do is try to line up so that the center of this graft is lined up with the center lines here. So I have a vertical line here that I'll try to line up here, horizontal line that I try to line up this horizontal line on. Notice I've already pushed out a cutout area here that I refer to it as a window, and I'm going to take the other side off. The next thing I want to do is this plate has to be able to move up and down, and you have to undo an Allen head screw here. See, I have to move the plate up until it touches this little point here in the midline. What the midline pointer is indicating, and this is extremely important, one of the most important measurements that we do. It indicates if this is a right and left condyle. When you put your teeth together, quite frequently you may be shifted to one side, like this. So that my right condyle, when I put the teeth together, there's an incline or a crossbite or something that's causing me, when I go into centric occlusion, for my right condyle to slide over to the right side every time I swallow. It's doing this. So that's what we're measuring, is what's happening to the condyles in centric occlusion in a transverse direction. And the reason I say that it's very important, we have found that if you measure 0.5 millimeters or less in that measurement, you're probably in a healthy situation as far as the condyle. But if you measure 0.8 millimeters when you close your teeth together, for example, if my right condyle is moving 0.8 of a millimeter to the right side every time my teeth come together, I will guarantee you that you've got problems in the right joint. So that's the reason I say it's a very, very important measurement, and therefore it is the very first measurement that we do when we do the MCD. The first thing you do when you start your procedures is you take your CO bite first, that is your centric occlusion bite first. And then you take your centric relation bite. No matter what technique you use, the next step is to take your centric relation bite. We always have used what we call power centric bites and to record our centric relation. When you try to put the teeth together in centric occlusion, you'll find that you cannot put the models together without being a rock. That is, you see it's movable. When I've put it into centric occlusion, they're not steady. What happens in the mouth is that maybe there's an incline that's hitting and the tooth is slightly mobile and it will deflect one tooth just slightly to the side. Maybe a tooth is a little bit elongated, maybe a 0.5 millimeter elongated. But when you bite down, the pressure of you biting intrudes the tooth that millimeter. But then when you take your impressions of the teeth, those teeth are not intruded, or that tooth is not deflected. So that when you pour your models now, you've poured your model without the tooth being intruded. That would be intruded when the patient actually closes it into centric occlusion. Therefore, that tooth is elongated, so to speak, and it hit first, and now the models will rock. That's the reason that you have to take a CO bite. It stabilizes the case at centric occlusion, so when you put your models together in centric occlusion, they will not rock around. So that's why it's important to have a good centric occlusion bite as well as a good CR bite. So I'm going to demonstrate first how to do just the CO bite. Some doctors will do an MCD with just using a CO bite, which I'm going to show you. And so you put the CO bite on, put it on the upper model first. Get it seated like this. Now take your lower model, invert it, make sure your condyle blocks are in, and make sure this is still taped down so that this plate doesn't fall down in the way. And you try to direct the teeth right into the centric occlusion bite. Seat it good. Drop the pen, and now then it should be stable if I touch from here to here. But if I touch back here, it'll do this. So you have to be careful how you handle the instrumentation when you are doing your MCD. Now, when I do the actual measurements, I can take my hand and hold it in position like this and move the condyle blocks out and mark. The other way to do it, and a lot of doctors do it this way, is they'll take a rubber band, in fact, you might take two of them, good strong rubber bands, and put it and lock it like this. But in this case, this rubber band's not too strong, so I would put another rubber band on there to lock it in position. Then you would take, for example, I'm doing the CO bite, so I would use red articulating paper and put here, move the block out, and get a mark. So that's the way I would do the MCD using just the CO wax bite. Now I want to show you the method is probably more accurate than doing it in that manner. Another approach to doing the MCD. I showed you putting just the CO wax bite on and then doing the measurements with just the CO bite, assuming that you got the crosshairs exactly correct, etc. But what I'm going to show you now is how you would use the CR bite, the actual bite that you use to mount your models on the articulator. And we're going to mark the CR bite on the flags, and then we're going to put the CO bite on and mark the CO bite and compare the CO bite to the CR bite. Okay, we're going to do the CO bite, and we're going to put the marks on the flags and measure the CO discrepancy. That'll help in stabilizing my models now. I probably will use my hand also because I'm going to be working a little bit in an awkward position in order for the camera to see it. The next thing I want to do though, as I said, we always want to do the center mark first. So I've got to release the flags where they're stuck down here. Since I'm working with the new frame and everything here, new MCD, I think it would be wise to put a little Aquaphor onto the actual lower member of the MCD where your flags are going to stick down so that they will release easier than what I just found out. It's difficult to release the flags correctly. So put a little Aquaphor not only on the plate, but also on the articulator itself. Now I'm going to try to do this. I'm going to hold the model, put the articulating paper in with the dull side down. That's the marking side. I want to leave a mark on the flag. Mark about 1 millimeter over this way. So the discrepancy is about 1 millimeter condylar shift to the right side in CO. Now I'm going to mark the left condyle. You have to loosen the screw here, and then the condyle block will move out. So you can take the articulating paper, move the condyle block out, I'm going to mark the other side, and then I'm going to show you and discuss it with you. Okay, now if we look at on the right side, you can see the red mark, which indicates the condyle on the right side has been displaced approximately 2 millimeters vertically and about 0.5 millimeter posteriorly. So on the right side, when the patient puts their teeth together, the condyle goes down and back, down 2, back 0.5 millimeter. This is a very typical finding. This patient had TMJ problems, and this is one of the things we use to show why the patient might have TMJ problems. On the left side, the condyle is down about 1 millimeter and back about 0.5 millimeter. So on both sides, the condyles go down and back from CR to CO. Okay, we're going to do a CR, put the CR wax bites on and do the MCD using the CR wax bites. Theoretically, the marks should come out exactly on the crosshairs on the flags. Practically, that doesn't happen all the time. On occasion, what we'd like to do is come out within about 1/4 millimeter of the crosshairs. I'm going to use black articulating paper to mark the CR. Red was done in CO, but you had to put the dull side of the articulating paper toward the flag. I use my right hand to help stabilize it, and then you can use your left hand and lift up the plate with your left hand, and that's what I was doing to mark the center one, like so. Again, I'm going to hold the model. I've got the rubber bands helping. I'm going to hold the models, hold them together, and then I can go in, hold the flag against the condyle block, and use my fingers in to bring the condyle block out. Again, hold the models down And hold the paper with one hand, use a finger back here to bring the block out. And we've marked them. So that's the way we mark. It came out pretty good. Now let me just take it apart to actually show the flags good. You see the technique. We've done CR bite now. We did CO bite before. Now what we're going to do is we're going to relate the red mark to the black dot to make a determination of the discrepancy. We're not going to use the crosshairs anymore. So let me take it apart now so we can really see this good. Okay. When we measured just the centric occlusion bite, we determined that she had about a 1 millimeter side shift to the right, not side shift, but displacement of condyle to the right, which is fairly severe. But we must remember the measurements depends on how the centric relation models were mounted. So then we used our centric relation bites and we measured the centric relation bite, and we can see that the black mark is a centric relation bite. It's about a 0.5 millimeter off of the midline here. But if we relate the CO bite to the CR bite, there's only about less than a 0.5 millimeter discrepancy to the right side. So this says that the right joint is probably pretty good, whereas before we thought, oh, she's got big problems in the right joint. There's one other thing I want to explain to you now. When you look at the flag assembly here, it says that this is the right side, this is the left side. But the right side of marking is on the left of the instrument, whereas the left is on the right side of the instrument. What's the difference here? The difference is that the upper part of the articulator is the movable part. The lower part is fixed. In the patient, the lower part moves, not the upper. So you have to reverse it when you're measuring like this. So even though it's on the right side, the measurement is on the left side here, it's actually the right side that's moving because the top of the articulator moves, not the lower member of the articulator. Now if we look at what's happening COCR on the condyles, if we look at the black mark, which is CR mark, it's about 1 millimeter off. It's a little more than I'd like, but we're going to go ahead. But if I relate the black mark to the red mark, we can see that now that on the left side the condyle goes down and about 1.5 millimeters and forward about 0.5 millimeter. So on the left side the condyle is going down and forward, whereas before we thought it was going down and back. So in relation to how the models are mounted in CR, the condyles are moving down and forward on the left side. On the right side, we can see now our CR dot is about 0.5 millimeter from the crosshairs, so that's good relation. But now we see that it is strictly a straight vertical displacement of the condyle on the right side. It goes down about 2 millimeters on the right side from CR to CO. So when you relate everything to your actual mounting in CR, you see it changes a little bit. So this is important. So using the CR bites is an important way to measure your CO-CR discrepancy. The AD2 articulator holds centric very well. Remember the centric lock here. And if I take a hold of it and try to push it side to side, there's absolutely no movement. So that's showing that it is holding centric very, very good. And that's very important. Some of the articulators, you'll find that there'll be a little bit of wobble back and forth, so it's not in a very tight centric. The AD2 system also comes with a magnetic mounting system, and I just want to show you quickly how that works. You have your You have your mounting plate. This is the magnet. Fits in the hole here. And then and it's just a regular mounting plate with the two holes here that go onto the post here. So you put it on, and the screw here screws into the magnet and holds it in place. Okay. Some doctors use magnetic plates all the time and have magnetic plates on their articulator all the time and don't change it. If you're going to do that, then you use the Allen head screws. And just lock it on with the Allen head screws. Now, if you're going to use this system all the time, you also have to have these magnetic mounting plates on your MCD, because your models are attached by the magnets, as I'll show you in just a moment. But it has the convenience. It has the convenience of just, this happens to be a set of models that was mounted on the second generation articulator with the magnetic plates. And you see now the plate on the bottom is matches the 4 indentations here, kind of like your test column. And so this model, lower model, would be just put it on. And the upper, put it on, and now to take them off. So you have that convenience, and many doctors like this and use this routinely. And it's the same, you get the same mounting as we had before is on this patient, but it's the convenience of just being able to pop the models off and transfer them to another instrument. Now, if you're going to mount the case, of course you would just take a blank plate, put it on, and now you mount your model just the same as we did with the screw plate. Those are very strong magnets, as you see. Sometimes without the model there to get it off, it can be a little hard to pop them off. Now, if you wanted, the other advantage to this, if you wanted to do a split cast check, if you wanted to check to make sure that your model, you mounted your lower model accurately, what you would do is mount it just like we've done here. But then we have to take the lower model has to be movable. So to make it movable, we take the magnet out. Now the lower model would fit here, but now I put it into the wax bite, and if it didn't fit correctly, then it would not fit into the grooves correctly here. So my split